Right, I hope we are live. Just give me a second and are we live? Are we live? I can't see anyone talking. Yes, hey, right. Hello everyone. Welcome to a live stream where we're talking about cave art, and I'm here with young Simon Davies of Mythopia, the creator of the Great Tree of Religion. So let's welcome him along. Hello, Simon.
Hello, how's it going, John?
It's all going very well if we ignore all the technical issues I'm struggling with as we go. We got a few people here. Hello, Phil, Esmil, patron. Hello. We can see Joshua and Jason. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all well. So, Simon, why are we talking about cave art? What did you come across? I know we talk a lot. So if people don't know, we are friends, and we have regular chats offline about various topics. And one day, Simon came up to me with a picture of some art, didn't you?
Yeah, you might have seen it on Twitter. So at the moment, I've got this tree of religion I made last year, and I want to do videos and little discussions about it, one religion at a time. And I asked my patrons, where did they want to start? And they all said, start at the beginning, right at the bottom of the tree, and we'll work our way up. So I started doing lots of stuff on the cave art and looking into this possible mythological motifs that might exist in cave art. And I came across one in particular, which we'll talk about later, which is Magura Cave in Bulgaria. And I got really excited because there were so many interesting motifs and images in it that looked highly sort of symbolic of being mythological. I was like, this must be mythology. So I just shared it with you, and we had a good conversation about it. And then I think we said, hey, why don't we do just some chat in the future about cave art in general through the lens of mythology?
Yes.
And,
when we had a discussion, we looked at certain things and we had different opinions of what they were. We thought, actually, this will make a great discussion. So, welcome, everyone. There's a lot more people on now. Alan, Pedro, Matthew, thank you. Everyone hit finds loads of people. So, thank you. Hope you're all well. An artist, my daughter is a geologist and a cave scientist. Oof. Right, we may be under the scrutiny of
I feel the pressure is on.
Yes, this is going to be. Obviously, I'm going to apply some academic thought to this, but there may be some speculation about this. I mean, we will never know what cave art really means. Specifically, we won't know exactly, because what happens is we tend to categorize things, even myths and folktales. We categorize them in definitions we create. So, in effect, we are. You could say mythologizing myths, by categorizing. So we're doing the same with cave art. We're placing it in a category, saying what it is. We may actually only be looking at it from our perspective rather than really understanding what was going on at the time. But hopefully, we will come up with some very sensible thoughts. And we're going to go across a whole range of timescales, different species of humans as well, and very different styles of art from all over the world. So hopefully you'll find that interesting. Now, questions. So there is something called a super chat. I'm not overly technical, but if you do a super chat, that will cost money. And I'm not after your money, but if you do a super chat, it will pop up and I will definitely see it. So I will definitely answer that. But if you don't want to do that, that is fine. Just put the word question at the start of your question, and then that'll be easier for me to see. And hopefully I'll be able to answer that question, or Simon can answer that question.
I've got to say, I've got my camera directly in front of the thread where all of the people are talking, so I can't see it very well, but I can't really adjust it because I spent ages getting set up, so I'm having to do this to read them.
Oh, okay. I've got an iPad down here watching it on YouTube.
Brilliant. Okay, you've got it covered then.
Although I'm about a minute behind, so I don't, chat has got a minute to cause anarchy before I realise what is going on. But hopefully you won't. Hopefully you'll be tip top and happy. Hello everyone. People still coming on. Whoa.
Hello Canada.
Hello Canada. Is there Canada in there? Woof. And Belgrade.
Yeah. Bavaria. Hello Bavaria.
Wow. Norway. Fantastic.
I like it. International. This is fantastic.
Really, really good. Right. So what do we do? Shall we just dive in there? chat, or should we give people another minute or two?
We can keep chatting for a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
fine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, I will try and do something technical. I can show that. Yes. Thank you for your donation. Really helps. Any sort of donations you make will go straight into the Mythology Database. So, in fact, before we start, we can talk about our two loves. So, you have so let's talk about yours first, which is a project you're doing, which is the Great Tree of Religion. So,
yes,
for people who don't know, why don't you talk about that? And I can put it on the screen if you want.
Yeah, go for that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll zoom out so they can see it. So, one of the posts I've been posting for years on mythology, and that includes studying religion, because obviously a lot of myths are nested inside religions. And I did a tree, I think in 2012, and it was very successful. It had about, I suspect, 50 odd religions on it. And all the time people would write to me saying, can you add some more? Can you add some more? And I kept building on it and building on it until I got to version 2.2, which is very flawed. It wasn't very accurate. It had a lot of problems, but it gave you a really good idea of where religions sit in history and how they evolved and grew over time. And then I decided, I think it was 2 years ago, I thought, right, this is it now. Let's just go for the ultimate definitive version of the Tree of Religion and get every single religion that's ever existed on there as best I can. And I think I can't remember how many it is now. I think it's the 300 and something are on there. But I've catalogued and placed all these world religions starting from right down here in the prehistoric era between 400,000 and 60,000 BC. And we go all the way up to modern times, right up here at the very top. So you've got zero common era here, which is just where Christianity eventually will form. So if I zoom out a bit, you can see a lot of modern religions are actually at the top third of the tree. And there's loads going on below. And today we'll be focusing right on the bottom. Well, I say bottom to middle, where all of these very early sort of myths and prehistoric art was created. And we're going to try and unpack it, obviously, one at a time. So... I'll see if anybody got a question.
And then Howard has so to say thanks to Howard. Howard from Norway, thank you very much for that. That's much appreciated. And I say hello everyone from everywhere around the world: South Africa, Germany, North Carolina, West Texas. Wow, this is incredible.
Carolina. So, wow.
I'll give a quick. Hopefully, you will all probably know about the Mythology Database, but if you don't, let me tell you about my passion, which is the Mythology and Folklore Database, where we have now, I can say, 190 to 200,000 narratives, all searchable in the database. We're doing some really fantastic things right now about allowing searches of individual narratives, and we can do some great stuff. And I'm working with a number of universities right now to actually create additional data by examining those narratives and classifying them in different ways. And I'll try and make sure that data is then applied and everybody can see it. But there's some fantastic stuff coming up. Hopefully this year we will, and sooner rather than later, I'll allow submissions from all of you. If you have your own myths and folklore you want to submit, which will be brilliant, because I had to get a process in so people can validate what's being entered. So we want to make sure that any myths or folklore is sort of, well, we'll say validated, verified, and we have a source material we can reference. But yeah, that would just increase the data within that and the things we can do. So it's all looking fantastic stuff. So as I say, if anybody did donate, all the money goes straight to running that, because it can cost thousands of pounds to run certain compute things on it. Because if you've got 200,000 stories, to do compute on 200,000 stories to find out particular things, that takes a lot of time and computer processing power. But so that's where that goes. It's a great project. It's used by universities across the world, from Harvard and MIT, Yale to Oxford. I don't think Cambridge use it yet, but UCL do, UAL, all sorts. So fantastic. So that's where that's going. Let's make sure everyone's happy. Question: in the database, can you see the age of myths? Not directly. So in the database, when you look at a motif, so a myth will belong to a category of motif or many categories of motif. when you look at that, you'll get a map of its distribution. Now, through experience, I can have a gut feel on the age of a myth based on its distribution. And I was pondering, I don't know if this would be a good idea, putting in a tool that will guesstimate the age if certain, assuming certain criteria are met, which we can't tell. That's it's something I don't think we can do unless we do formal research on those myths. And where there is formal research on those myths, there may be eventually, like for myths like the cosmic hunt or flood myths, people coming from the underworld, things like that, I may be able to reference research and studies that have done that and aged it. But I wouldn't necessarily store that data in the database. But I will probably make a video at some point explaining how you can roughly date myths. And we'll probably touch on that as we go through these paintings, because we like to understand how humans dispersed across the world. And there's much talk, and conversation about what's right and what's wrong, and when did humans leave Africa, and did they leave Africa, and how many dispersal times were there, and that. So that's all very interesting. So we'll talk about that. So at Kraken for the ancient, the mythical land of his present. Aha. So again, right. So, what questions or mysteries are you hoping to solve with the religion tree? So yes, Simon. Before we jump into cave art, one question then: are you hoping to solve mysteries?
Actually, I find that I'm a very visual person, so I like to see a map of mythology. I like to see as many diagrams as possible, so charts and graphs and maps and so on. So I've used this tree, and I've got a few theories based on the tree that I wouldn't have known about until I used it. So I'll give one example, if it's okay to bring it up, John.
Sure.
Can you add it on for me?
Yeah. Yep. Give me a second. My skills at doing stuff is not great. That should. Also,
there we go.
John, you can call me tonight.
So all these different coloured branches represent different regions. So you've got Africa, Europe, the Middle East, North Eurasia, and so on. And I just like to see how these migrations of myths and traditions and religions travel around the planet. And one in particular, I was telling John about this before. I'm very interested in a couple of myths in South America, like the Inca and the Aztec myths, because they have a lot of motifs that I recognize from Indo-European ones, which is strange because North America doesn't necessarily have them. So I'm trying to find a way of how do these myths from South America, which is this green branch here, how have they got Indo-European sort of motifs in them when it hasn't traveled over the Bering Straits and down through North America? So some of the theories I was having is it's traveling across the Pacific. So because I can visually see the map and the timeline, I know that this green line here, this green line is from the Indo-Aryan migration, and it represents how, if I just go back further over here, the Proto-Indo-European, which is your speciality, isn't it, John? How that culture sort of migrated outwards into Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and down into South Asia and so on. Well, it went into the Indo-Iranian culture in Persia, and then we also find it crosses over into this Central Asian what's this? This is animism. I don't know if I can pronounce that, John. But we're now in Central Asia here, and this culture, Afro-Sivo, animism, has Indo-European evidence there. So they've got all sorts of evidence to prove that their influence was there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can also see it traveling here just after the Indo-Iranian Empire had established itself. Another branch comes over into India, and it affects the Vedas. So the ancient Indian traditions get the Indo-European influence. But we also know it travels across and very likely enters East Asia, because Pangu in Taoism, is very much linked to the Umir character, isn't he? In the cosmic man, the cosmic giant. Yeah. So there's motifs that can be seen have traveled from the Indo-European people into East Asia. Then you find that there's a few places where it appears in Southeast Asia, And then I thought to myself, is it possible? This just to give a bit of clarity, a solid green line means it's proven that by evidence that these migrations took place. When I create a dotted line, it means that it's speculative. So we're not 100% sure. There's no direct evidence saying that, that Indo-European myths got into Taoism. But speculatively speaking, if it did travel into all the way down to Papua New Guinea after going through Southeast Asia, you can actually take it across. This blue line here takes it into the South American region and the Polynesians. And I think it's possible it got into all of these traditions here. So the Nazca, Wari people, Inca, and Aztecs and so on. So they all seem to have been influenced by an Indo-European kind of motifs that made it into their myths. Right. Anyway, that's a separate thing, but that's an example of it's mysterious, and it helps me to unlock the mysteries by being able to see it visually. So that's how I use the tree.
So we have a question, which is, can people get a print of that tree? And if they can, where? Where can they get it from?
That's a link to my Shopify there. If they're interested.
It's got a shop. But it's, go to the shop then. And
but if they want to check my Patreon, I'll put a link at the end of my Patreon, because you can join a free tier and keep up to date with all the news if there's discounts and things going on.
Okay. There's a couple of questions which I'll answer now before we jump into the art. So the first is AI. Can AI help the database? There are 200,000 narratives, and narratives are a huge number of tokens each if you talk AI. That's why it costs so much to do anything. So AI can help with certain things. So, for example, we can ask AI to go through all the narratives and tell us, is the hero of the story a male or female subject? Because some people in gender studies, in social sciences, need that question. In fact, that is a question being asked by a Norwegian University of Science and Technology at the moment. So, yes, we would use AI for that, because that is far more reliable than asking people to go through that. So, yes, but the cost can be prohibitive. So you need to then get research grants and to fund that. But also can run AI locally, but that takes literally 100 times longer than using the cloud. So it could take probably 4 to 6 hours to run a piece of AI on the cloud, which you see on the internet. If I run it locally, it could take a week to go through 200,000 narratives. So AI is brilliant, but a challenge still, and it's very expensive. Now, the other question we got is, I saw something about the Pleiades, and is it 100,000 years old? So the story we see of the Seven Sisters, if I remember correctly, seems to be a combination of 2 stories, of which one can be seen as being told in Africa before human dispersal. So part of the story of the Pleiades seems to be very old. But I do have a video about it, so feel free to watch that. Hello from Australia. There's any other questions? Right. Yes, things are going to get cheaper with AI, and I'm on the case. I'm pretty familiar with what goes on in AI, because one of my previous jobs was, I've been developing AI since I was a young lad with hair. So yes. So I'm quite familiar. So we get there. So let's talk paintings, because that's why you're all here.
Yes.
So the first painting we're going to start with today is this, which, to be honest, probably isn't the most spectacular painting you have ever seen. You may think what it is, but this is actually the oldest narrative painting we have, or what we believe to be the oldest narrative painting we have. And that's partly because we haven't interpreted other older paintings as narratives. So this is meant to be a hunting scene of people attacking a pig, and there's actually a second picture, which if I zoom up, which is taken from this. So it's about 2.5-3 meters wide, the actual painting, and the color shot at the top is can use infrared or ultraviolet type photography to try and get the pigments off a wall in a photograph to see more detail. But the picture is part of a larger picture, and as you see, it makes sense as a hunting scene because there's a number of animals there being attacked by people. Now, what's interesting in that is that the animals do seem bigger than people, which is something we may want to keep a note of when we see other paintings, like, why are animals bigger than people?
Or in some cases, why are people bigger than people? That's another one you tend to see.
Exactly, and why are animals bigger than other animals? But in effect, I think it's just, in this case, it's just trying to fit everything on a piece of stone. If you've got to scale something. So there's nothing particularly exciting about the narrative, other than hunting is important. Hunting was absolutely important to our ancestors, because without food, you die. So I feel that the reason they're painting these scenes is to either celebrate a hunt, or it could be that they're putting these scenes down in hopefully that it creates I'd like to think of it as a memory or a picture of how they want the hunt to go, so that when they do hunt, it follows that scene. And that's how I used to feel about much of the cave art we see, certainly in Europe, of animals. I feel that people put in that there as a representation of what they want to happen there, projecting sort of a hunt success. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on this, Simon, or is it?
The only thing I was going to add is this is something I might mention a few times during the discussion. Is we're looking at this through the lens of mythology. And so we're thinking about the motifs and so on. And we know one of the oldest, well, the oldest myth, which you're quite renowned for, that you've shared on your site, is the cosmic hunt, isn't it? So have you had any thoughts about whether there's anything about this that potentially shows you or reveals aspects of that myth? I mean, it's obviously not much to drop on.
Yeah, no, exactly. I get that a lot. People see a hunting scene and think, oh, is it part of the cosmic hunt? Which I always say very carefully. And for people who know, they know why. So generally not, because there's no relationship to stars there, to constellations. So at the end of the cosmic hunt, the animal and the hunters go into the stars and are memorized there, normally as Ursa Major. But there's no indication of this picture that is the case. I think this is just it's a hunting scene because either people had a great hunt or people want a great hunt. That's how I see this. But it's just, in case you weren't aware, it's not a great picture, but this is, now you're aware that this is the first story we have, really. So yes.
Well, I was going to add something else to that as well, which is other things we can try and grab onto is the Aboriginal people. We know that they've got one of the oldest surviving religions on the world with Dreamtime and the dreaming. And that image, although we can't prove it, you can assume that those people drawing it had a spiritual connection with the animals, just like in the Aboriginals they had the people of the kangaroo, the jackal people, the koala people. A lot of the times they build their tribe from this idea that they had originated from a certain animal and that they had archetypally they were linked to some kind of animal. So that there's nothing in that image that would allow you to grasp that. But what we can say, it was in the collective conscious of the people who traveled along in the first migration, because many of the myths that appear later on, some of those surviving tribes are still practicing those sort of rituals and ideas today. So Aboriginal people would be a great example.
They've written. So when this painting was first found, it was thought to be a little younger than it is now, which is why it came up again in the news. They did extra work on it and found out actually it's nearer 49,000 years old, give or take 3,000 years, which makes it old. And therefore, it may well be painted by ancestors of the people that did go to Australia. But it's also within the time frame that it wasn't, and it was a part of what I consider the second dispersal of humans. So that's, and I'll explain that now actually, because it's quite an interesting thought. David Wright talks about it quite a lot. He's a famous DNA guy. So when we think of dispersals, we think of these humans must have had advanced physical evolution to allow them to succeed, to do better. But the fact is that evolution-wise, humans haven't really evolved much in 200,000 years. We haven't really changed too much. What has changed is our ability to do things, our cultural ability. So our ability to tell stories or communicate or paint or start fires something like that. So what we find is that the dispersal of 70,000 years ago in that human population, it didn't have much impact on the other humans around the world. So, there were Denisovans and Neanderthals. They all lived not necessarily in harmony together, but they lived together, Homo erectus and the like. And, humans wandered their way to Australia. That's the current thinking by a majority of people. But what we then see is a second dispersal from probably the Saudi Peninsula, but some say Africa, of a new wave of humans with a cultural advantage. And we know they had a significant cultural advantage because it was that human population around, say, 45, 50,000 years ago that then removed all the other human species from the planet. They were the ones who removed the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, Homo erectus, the Hobbit people, and all like unless they're still alive. Because if you've just watched Kaylee's stream, I know a couple of you have, I think she may have been talking about that. But so it was that. That's really interesting. So it suggests that there's a cultural advantage, and that advantage may be to do with communication, maybe to do with hunting or storytelling or something significant happened there that allowed us to be incredibly successful compared to all the other humans that come before us. So when we're looking at things on the 45, 50,000 year sort of bracket, there is a grey line on whether that was made by
the first second
human,
migration,
or the first major dispersal, or the second cultural one. However, the humans did disperse Africa long before that. Went in and out of Africa. But we were just talking about significant dispersal where we can trace DNA lineage back into Africa from that dispersal. But this isn't all about human dispersals, but I just wanted to sort of add that bit of data for you. Right. There are some questions. Could the hunt scenes be tactical in nature based on the local topography, leaving an instruction for future generations to learn? Well, that's an interesting point, Jason. So that was from Jason Matheson. It may, to me, the pictures help a story to be told. So I could imagine that someone tells a story whilst looking at the picture. The trouble is that some of these pictures aren't painted, the pictures we have left aren't necessarily painted in accessible places. So you wouldn't necessarily expect people to go on a journey to the back of a cave to hear a story. But the reason why we get paintings there is that all the paintings that weren't in inaccessible places have been normally erased by Mother Nature through environmental damage. So I'm not overly sure, but I think there could have been an element of storytelling to that picture. Another question from Diesel366. I read a book recently giving over the use of art as a possible mnemonic for all traditions. Oh, well, I sort of just touched on that. I think they complemented each other. And when we look at figures like the Lion Man, like this chap here, some people believe he was a tool for telling stories. There is a lot of wear on his body where it feels like he's been held a lot and possibly passed around a lot in this particular place. So it may be, they use these things to tell a story. Unfortunately, he can't tell us that. But what I will say, because I get a lot of this, that this was a child's toy, right? Look at the size of this, right? And it was made of bone. Trust me, a child could club to death its siblings with one of these if you gave it as a toy. It was not a toy. Or I'm 99.999% certain this would not be a toy, or not to a responsible adult or parent. I'll put you down there. Right. A question. I'm also very interested in diesel. Question. Yeah. So I'll just answer that. Any other questions?
I was going to expand on the idea about once you've drawn a story on a wall. It's interesting that, as you said, sometimes it's so deep inside a cave. Would everybody in a tribe have gone in to see it? And I was wondering if, I mean, this is pure speculation now, but it's a story that you would pass on from generation to generation. So if it was a shaman passing on to a younger shaman, they would take you in potentially into the cave and then say, look, here's the work this is our great ancestors made this, and I'm passing down to you what my great grandfather passed on to me, and this is the story, and they go through it, and then they'd go back and maybe at the surface they'd just talk about it and verbalize it. So it was an oration instead. But for them, the story was printed on the wall. And I guess it would be sacred, wouldn't it? Because you're touching upon something that was made maybe scores or centuries before, and you're passing that knowledge down. So it must have felt quite sacred to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly those stories would be sacred. I mean, everything. I mean, Eliade probably phrases this best. I think it's this in The Myth of the Eternal Return. So he suggested everything was sacred back then. People didn't do things just for the sake of them. You know, that everything was ritualized. You know, to eat, you would prepare the food, and there was a ritual to it. To, you know, when you ate, that you had a ritual to it. When you hunted, there was a ritual to it. When you killed an animal, everything was ritualized. So, yes, there would have been stories about that, and I think those stories would be sacred truths at that time. And yes, so people would have gone to the back of the cave. I wouldn't necessarily say there would be a shaman there, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. It depends on the year, but I think shamans are probably no older than 10,000 years and probably even younger than that. But let's say we can talk about that in a bit. But certainly, yes, they can go to back a cave, and those sorts of stories would probably be the most sacred, the harder ones to get to. I think, you know, but as I say, there may well have been 1,000 paintings at the front of the cave, and there's no trace of them anymore because they've been washed away or whatever. So, okay, so that was the oldest narrative in the world. So let's look at probably one of the most famous of cave paintings. If I can become technical here, how do I do this? How do I show something on the screen? Is this something you? Oh, I know what to do. I know what to do. Skills. Boom. Right. Sorry about this. Whilst I am really technical, I'm also at the same time very not technical. Right. So this is a cave painting from the Lascaux Caves. It's from what we call the shaft scene, and it shows a number of things. The most prominent one of which is a bird standing on a stick. Above it, a man lying down who seems to be quite alert, let's say. Being British, I get embarrassed about talking about things like that. So he's
quite alert.
Quite alert. Next to him is a buffalo, and what's quite interesting with the buffalo is it looks like there's a spear through its hind, and its intestines are coming out near its rear legs at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but by its rear legs, you'll see sort of like a loop of things, and we think that's the intestines. So it's like the buffalo's been killed. And then we have to the other side, to the left-hand side, a rhino, which looks like it's pooping dots, speeding away. But it probably isn't pooping dots. They're dots meaning something else. So that's a really interesting picture. And it has been interpreted many different ways. And I'd be really interested to hear your view, Simon, on what you think any of that can mean.
Well, obviously I'm drawn to the Birdman with the beak face, because that's one of the earlier versions we get of a sort of zoomorphic being, or what do they say, theranthropic, so half man, half animal. So that the fact he's got a bird face, straight away you feel like you're in the realm of mythology now, because you're thinking they are abstracting their way of thinking and they're trying to say something else about this character. You know, he has the essence of the bird in him or something. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, when you study the Aboriginal people, and I'm looking at history in a big gulp here, I know, because they date back even further. But we know that in the collective conscious, this idea that you didn't feel disconnected from the animal world. You felt like you were a part of it, an extension of it in some way. So interesting that this tribe, whoever drew this, or this person, was trying to identify a character that was sort of avian, or like an avian sort of human. very difficult to put anything on that beyond it, because we are so far back in history, and obviously there's nothing Indo-European here, so this is going back to prehistoric times.
Oh yes, this is long before we have those sort of culture.
And the fact it looks like who knows, maybe he skewed the buffalo and died in the process. It's hard to say. He looks like he's dead, doesn't he? But then the erect penis, what's going on there? It's interesting to unpack.
Yes, so there's a lot of people who comment on, or who have commented on this, suggesting this is a shamanistic scene. I very much dispute that, because I don't think that form of sort of sacredness was around, or those thoughts, those religious thoughts, I guess you call them, spiritual thoughts, were happening there. I do also agree with you that at some point, early on in humans' evolution, we thought we were the same as animals. We thought we were no different than them. But there will come a point when we realise actually we are different, and we are more powerful. And you actually see that when farming comes along. We control nature, and all sorts of crazy things happen, and haven't stopped happening since that time. So the dots are also interesting, because they may relate to a proto-writing system we hear. So there was a paper out which suggested that the dots relate to the lunar cycles or similar that pass between an animal's migration or gestation period. And there seems to be a good correlation between some of the dots and those animals.
It's so strange why they put it. I mean, in context of, you're always trying to get as much information as you can, and they stuck it right behind its rear, its tail lifted, and it just literally look like they're coming out. And obviously, it's hard to understand why they would have done that. But what is your idea?
Yes, exactly.
Because it could have positioned those dots inside it or something, but it's right in its rump.
Well, I think it's actually more basic than that, because, and we'll see this as we go on, but if you look at any art, except for more modern art, I would say, males love to be drawn with erect penises. I mean, they're drawn fighting with them. They're drawn laying down with a buffalo that has been cut open with them. I don't. It's just something that has fascinated the artist.
We've got cave art coming up, haven't we? Yeah.
We're still fascinated by it. So who knows? But yes, so there's obviously something going on there, and there was definitely some meaning behind it, some narrative, almost certainly. But what that is, no one will, I don't think, ever know. But it's a really interesting point. But we do have another painting from that cave to look at, which maybe give an indication of the thoughts of those people. And after we looked at that, we'll go back to some of the questions we've got. So this is the other picture. It's from the Hall of Bulls, and there's a lot of animals, not just bovine, but we have horses and alike going across this. There's many of them. It's a fantastic scene, and again, there's been much written about this and what it means, and some people have said this relates to what the Milky Way looks like, and some people have said it relates to worship of these animals. I'm pretty sure it isn't related to constellations or the night sky. I've made a video about that to explain why I think stars were much more important and considered than being represented by a picture like this. They would know what to draw. They wouldn't draw full animals. So there's something else going on here. And again, I think it sort of relates to the mindset of the very first picture, that you want to project the animals you want to hunt, or you are respecting the animals you have hunted. Any thoughts on that? Or
are there any images of men hunting those animals, or is it just the animals themselves?
No, not there.
One thing I'll say is there's a confrontational sort of setup when you look at the two bulls facing each other, and you suddenly realize that behind the bull to the right, there's a few animals facing the same direction, and then when you get to the bull facing left, there's the other animals are facing that direction. So it almost feels like they're coming at each other, almost like there's a conflict of something going on. just an initial reading. That's all.
Interesting. Yeah, and again, it's is that deliberate, or is it just people painted from different ends of the cave to make that? But certainly the quality art is interesting. Like the almost naivety of, let's say, the horses. Like right in just off to the left, you see a horse with a large, thin legs. Where we see other pictures of horses that look perfect, or near, perfect. So that really interests me. That they're obviously getting different people. It feels like different people are making these different images for this particular scene, and not maybe the best artist, but maybe a specific hunter or a specific person who's related to that doing that. That's what I take from that.
Yeah, I'm still quite interested looking at those two directions, how they consistently. I'm trying to see if any are facing different directions, but they do seem to be all.
The very left-hand side, it looks like we've got a rear end of an animal with two legs.
Potentially, yes, I can see that. Yeah, and the legs are going that way. Fair enough. Yeah, so that does weaken that idea.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just people applying on top of.
But that could have been a story. That could have been a story about a mythical time with mythical beasts and how they forged the earth. Who knows? It smacks to me of a narrative. It's just that with so little information to grab hold of, it's pure mystery.
So if someone's telling a story about animals and how they run and stampede or herds, imagine having a story told in this cave.
Yeah,
with like the flames. I mean, that's absolutely. So let me see if I can whiz back to some questions. Chat has been very chatty, which is good. If I miss your question, I apologise. I'm conscious. Question, right. This is from Aphelion Drift. Given the time of the last glacial maximum, about 30k BCE, it went to about 22, I think, but and the spread of similar petroglyphs and myths, do you think we may be wrong with that we theorise when it comes to continental drift? No, I think looking at the age of the paintings, we haven't got any, as far as I'm aware, older than 25,000-year-old paintings in the Americas. So I'm quite happy with the glacial maximum causing a land bridge, allowing us to have confidence to travel to the Americas, not knowing that we were doing that, whether that was by boat along the coast of the new piece of land or whether that was by foot, who knows? And I don't think any of our theories probably really match what happened because of, say, the amount of ice and snow and how could we survive and what do we hunt. But yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I feel that the timelines are pretty good. I haven't seen any data to suggest to me that humans arrived in the Americas much before 25,000 years. Now, I know there has been finds and people have talked about it, but all of those finds have had some significant issues in terms of the quality of the data they have, even though that isn't necessarily reported by some of the people who promote those ideas on YouTube. So let's see what else. Question, right, Darren McAuliffe. Question, right. They thought we were no different to animals. Is that because the evolution that made us different was recent? The evolution that made us different, I think, is cultural. So when we realised we could do things animals couldn't do, that is when we differentiated ourselves from animals. As I say, it really probably showed in when it came to farming and gods changed. So gods went from, say, 15,000 years ago, my belief is that most humans at the time thought there were spirits and the things of spirits, like the noise of the wind and the lightning and the rain and the rivers. It's like animism, everything's had spirits. But then when we start farming and living in settlements, the gods become more human shaped. You see a lot more human formed spirits. Now, we do still see the odd human form older than 10,000 years, absolutely. But we don't know, were they spirits? Were they just related to one person? Or were there godlike figures coming? I don't know, but you certainly find, I think culture is the thing that makes a difference, not a physical evolutionary thing.
Do you think that Birdman was a mythical being or a deity? I mean, obviously this is pure speculation, but what's your instincts tell you?
I feel it is probably just a representation of a person who
could be a mask as well. Could
died,
be literally a mask.
Who's probably died in a hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So you could argue. I mean, and this is absolute complete speculation. Do not quote me on this, anyone. But it could be that where we see birds as being like messengers of death or whatever, because we do see that with dogs as well, that they are animals that we believed could walk between the other world and this world. What we find, we see burial rites, even recently, even sort of in Indo-Iran, we have knowledge of funeral rites where the body's left for dogs or birds to be eaten, because they then take your body physically to the other world because they've eaten it. So it could be that with this bird on a stick and this person laying down, although the excitement they show suggests he probably isn't dead, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But you've got the animal as well next to him that he's dead. So who knows? But it could be a representation of someone great who died, and they're just reflecting that.
Mm-hmm.
And they put a bird mask on him so he could be a bird, so he can fly to the
that's true.
other world.
But again, the bird mask. If it was a bird mask on a person, that still suggests that the tribe associates themselves with an animal. So there's still a strong idea that this is a totem animal to that tribe potentially, and the stick as well. I mean, what do you think? What do you think that bird on the stick is?
Because maybe they kept birds, or they knew how to encourage birds to land on a stick. Because they wanted birds there to eat things. And there's much talk in older settlements that there were rituals where they left blood in cups or pools for ritual purposes, and no doubt birds would go to that and eat that. So it might all be related to that, but I say it's all total speculation. Right, we've got a few. I think they're called super chats. I think. Thank you, JM. I appreciate that. I think JM is a Patreon. We have also. And birds are cameras.
If you can divine through the eyes of a bird and see through them, you can see.
So that's quite interesting. So we do see so if you're not aware, there is an evolution we see in shamans. Although I don't think this is a shaman's image, where male shamans tend to their mind tends to go somewhere, like their body tends to go somewhere, where I think female shamans tended to travel in a different form somewhere, like as an animal, like a bird. And we look at that as giving us some indication of how much through the sort of religious evolution cycle a culture is. Mm-hmm. So we see that. There's another big question. Right, from Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Right. Maybe it's the world's earliest mean tweet, and they've been making fun of the guy with a big nose, and that got killed for doing something stupid. Now, I have to say, if you're a gambling man, that's probably worth putting a couple of shekel on or something, or a mammoth's tusk. That it could be the man was stupid, got himself killed. Obviously, never play with a buffalo who's been speared. Is the more of that story? But yes, they're marvelous. I like that. But yeah, I don't know. But yes, it could be. Who knows? Right. How do I now remove this?
I got to say, what I love about the cave art theme is how it's so speculative. You really are on the fringes of what we know, and it's just so you're really drawing hard on imagination and the myths and the motifs. But yeah, a bird, heaven.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I think there's a few in the chat who are agreeing that it could be a bird mask, and they're liking your question, Simon. So keep it up. Excellent. There's correct. At what stage and date see yantra art as a magical tool? That's a great question. And I don't think we really know the answer to when art was used as magic. Perhaps it's always been used as magic. In fact, we will talk about that very soon to show you how far back we can go. Let me where are we on now? I've got some kind of organisational skills around here. So about three or four slides time, we'll talk a bit more about that. But next, let me get the next picture up, which I know a lot about. So, this picture. So it's not quite as old as others, but we believe it's part of a story that is very, very old indeed, which is around dragons. This is called the rain snake. And now, if you've watched any of my videos on dragons, you may be familiar with this. So I've put 3 pictures up so you can see how, on the top right, top left is how it is today. The top right is an enhanced photo, and bottom right is a sort of a high contrast, a replica of the key parts of that. And what that should show is a snake swimming, they believe. People around the snake who are also swimming. There's a person sort of lying horizontally. There are some people in the middle of the picture with blood spouting out their nose. It looks like having a nosebleed. Perhaps they're being sick. With people looking at their nose. There's another person slightly to the right, same thing. It looks like the snake may have been stabbed. So it's an incredibly interesting picture. And I think it was Julian who wrote the original paper about this rain snake, which was onto dragon myths. But the rain snake and the rainbow serpent of Australia are very similar creatures indeed. So these creatures have the mythology around them that they created life on the world, and basically the world was dry and barren. These big snakes came along, carved the valleys and the mountains, and made it rain, and life appeared. And there's all sorts of speculation about why we see this scene with people's nosebleeds. Some people believe they may have been bitten by a snake and the poison is making them bleed. Some may have drunk something to make them sick. All sorts of ideas, but really very interesting. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, Simon.
Well, I'm looking at the age, 5,000 BC. 5,000 years ago. So what's that? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Okay.
3,000, right. Yes.
So at 3,000 BC, I'm thinking it's interesting. Is this one of those potential myths that didn't necessarily originate in Africa, but maybe came down because we've got Mesopotamia, Egypt, and we've got sort of serpent motifs there. Where is it? South Africa. Oh, actually, South Africa. Right. That changes it. That's South Africa. Do we treat that as a very a distant region? So therefore, it is probably it's got its own myths and its own ideas, not influenced by anything from the north.
Myths may have originated here, or certainly this is a flavour of an original myth pre-dispersal out of Africa, and that's the thought of dragons. We see a really clear indication of the evolution of the dragon myth from Africa into Eurasia and down to Australia and the like. So this is probably one of the very first dragon type myths, the snake that created the world, before the dragon became more malevolent to us. Here the snake was benevolent, like good for us, but this picture is quite ambiguous in that respect, because it's really hard to make out if the snake is doing something good or bad. It's because everybody looks like they're in pain, but some people think they're dancing, some people
it's very dynamic, isn't it? It's very dynamic. So that the artist has really gone to town on. Looks like one guy's possibly going to kick somebody in the bottom when you look at it. Actually, it's a woman, so you can see her pendulous breasts are dangling down. There's a gentleman. It's in the bottom middle, this part. Yeah, and he almost looks like he's going to kick her, or he's running at her. But I'm not getting fighting as much potentially. I don't know. It's hard to say. Can you see anything there?
No, I think so. And in which case that would make this,
it would be a more benevolent scene. So potentially this goes back to the Africa's water snake being a benevolent being, wasn't it? It was considered in a more positive way.
The rainbow serpent was, absolutely. So, Yeah, so this is a really sort of famous
it does. I mean, it could be a celebration. In the rains in Africa, we know how important the rains are in Africa. So I can imagine this being a celebration, really.
Yes, and snakes are found near water as well, which is why we see a lot of stories around snakes around water.
I mean, have you come to the same idea that we developed the water snake based on the meandering river? So we sort of thought we could see the shape of a serpentine figure.
There is a level of influence there. What that influence was, we will never know. But without doubt, if you've climbed up a mountain and looked at the landscape and see a meandering river, you're going to think that looks like a snake.
No, I'm gonna. This is one of my favorite things about mythology. I love trying to put ourselves in the mind of our ancestors. So when you imagine starting to form stories and you're thinking more abstractly, I think that, as you said before, the key part of what defined us as being separate from animals in our minds, obviously we are animals, but we kind of separated ourselves through abstract thought, through culture. And I think the myths are a way of us thinking in metaphorical ways. So to see that river, that S-bend in a river, and then to look at the snake and it moves in a similar sort of serpentine way, and they start to make these pattern. That's what we do, like with pattern recognition, aren't we? We start associating the movement of the snake with the movement of the river. So there's a metaphorical link, and they start to see. They look deeply into it and think, there must be something there about the snake and the river that connects them together. So then they start thinking of it as in an abstract way, as what a being in its own right, a water snake. There's something there bigger that connects the two. So it's just trying to get into their mind and trying to break down how could they have come to this interpretation. And I think the idea, if you imagine it, you climb up on a mountain, you're looking down on the land, you see the rivers coming down, and it's serpentine, it's moving in meandering ways, and you're trying to make sense of it all, and you think, that looks like a snake. I can imagine that being it's almost like a geological snake. It moves like a snake, but it moves more slowly, and it's huge and vast, and it comes from the mountains. They could have created all sorts of stories from things like that. But that's I like that idea that they were creating metaphorical links and sort of really abstractly looking at the world in ways that nobody else, no other animal had done before.
Absolutely. And the landscape influences myth. I say this all the time, and that's a really clear example of that. They've got a few questions. Well, so one from Jason Matheson again. Talking of the excitement of the bird guy, don't bodies that go into rigor mortis get excited?
I thought the same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
It is possible. It is possible that has happened. So it could be a death scene. Because to me, death is the first myth, or the start of religion. The emotion you have when someone dies close to you, I think, you ask why are we dying? And you'd ask that when you got snakes around you, because you think snakes are immortal because they shed their skin, and the moon's immortal because it is a full moon and goes and comes back through the cycles. So these things had immortality to us. So why didn't we have it? So I think death is really key, and that's why I think a lot of the narratives we do see may well be about death. Now, right. Another question. What are your ideas on geometric prehistoric art? I believe it's quite common. Geometric. I see the maze. Have you seen the maze pictures? But in terms of line type drawings, I'm not so familiar with those. Unless you're talking, if we're talking purely mathematical.
I've got the book by, I can't remember her name. There's the book of a woman who is studying geometric symbols specifically. Okay. Genevieve, I can't remember. I'll have a look if I find the book now. Okay. But I remember her talking a lot about they were so abstract that it's not something from nature. It's almost like we were starting to find abstractions from nature by seeing symbols. Obviously,
the question, that's the universal question: did maths exist and we discover it, or did we invent it?
Yeah, I'm of the school of thought it exists out there, but some people think we invented it. But yeah, that's an interesting one. But the abstract symbols, what fascinates me is the abstract itself. The fact that you can, if you have a linear mind, like most animals, you wouldn't see abstractions. You don't necessarily make these connections. But on a poetical level, that we're thinking in a very poetical way. And I think that's a language like maths. And I think some people, I've heard some philosophers saying that they think that art and art and poetry is a way to describe certain aspects of the abstract that maths can't do. So mathematics is able to reveal certain things about velocity and volume and so on, and it can give us great understanding of reality. But there's other things in the abstract, like art and metaphor, which really helps you to penetrate deeper. So I do think our ancestors, what they were doing, it's groundbreaking for them to be in their mind when they're telling these stories, and nothing like that existed before. It must have been like a Christopher Nolan movie coming out in the cinema. I was like, oh my gosh, the storyteller's got something new they're going to reveal to us about these rivers, or about these idea that we're half, there's a bird spirit in some of us, or whatever it is. And yeah, but it must have been such a, to us today, we might think of these as infantile, or we might think of it as just we might think of it as primitive, or a deeply misunderstood thing. But up to them, I think they genuinely were seeing, it was just exciting to move into this abstract realm. And that's mythology is very good at doing that, isn't it? That's one of its strengths.
Right, we've got a super chat from J.M. Fenner. Maybe it's a signature like the early kings list. I am the man who is like an eagle, and I hunt these animals. So the man lying down is that it could be. Although I'm really liking the idea that he has died. That's really cool, isn't it? I don't like the fact he died. I like the idea that the painting could be about that. I don't know if that's right either, but yes, the narrative of death, I think, is more persuasive. But absolutely, it could be the man himself painting that, in that position, saying, "Look, I killed him, and I got excited about it." And we do actually see in Saybrook. You haven't seen? I've got a video about the narrative art on Göbekli Tepe and Saybrook and the like. And there's the earliest narrative we got there of a man who removes the testes of a bull. And then the next picture narrative is him holding his excitement. So it's like the hunting ritual is, you've become a man, and you can express yourself.
So it's almost as if to say, right, you're now fully a man now, and it's represented symbolically through an erection to say, this is manhood. You have become a man. It's interesting. I like that idea. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, well done, J.M. Fenner. That's haven't really thought of it like that, but there could be something there. There'll be something there indeed. I'll have to think about that. That's cool. Let me just see what else. Any other questions? Cool. You guys are talking loads. This is great. Question: do we have any cave paintings that we know are linked to myths? Yes, we do, and we will talk about those soon, I hope. Oh, there's another super chat. Right, from S Mills Patreon. So I've got to scroll down all the messages. So S Mill says, "What do you think about rainbows, Milky Way, and rivers like Nile being proof of a rain serpent to the people 70,000 years ago? Any cave art like this?" So I haven't seen cave art per se. I know the First Nation Australians have art that could represent it, and they talk about the peacock, I think, predominantly, but it's also the Milky Way is a river of souls, and is a trail where the rain serpent went. The rainbow, as the rain, absolutely. And there's all sorts of myths about rainbows then appearing in sunny skies, or when it's sunny and raining. There's all sorts of myths about that contrast of weather patterns. So I do think they are really important symbology in the environment for myth. But I can't recall, but I'm not an expert on cave art, but I cannot recall outside of Australia necessarily seeing art that's sort of over 10,000 years old plus, and certainly 70,000 years old, that's representative of that. Are you familiar with any? Because any art over 70,000 years is quite rare.
Over 70,000 years, no.
Yeah.
But all we've got is the Aboriginal people we know have the rainbow snake, and I've used your database to help me as I talked to you a bit about it, looking at the myths of the time, and we know that they had most likely a water serpent that goes back to sub-Saharan Africa, I believe. So taking us back to 70,000 BC and before. So it does seem that would be in the consciousness, although we haven't got the art to prove it. I think it would be in the collective consciousness at that time, that water snake. That's why I love using Craig and Ford's database, because you can help to pinpoint potentially where these dates are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're going to get sort of exciting and weird. So this art I'm about to show you, we didn't realise until recently, is from Neanderthals. It's found in Spain, and there's a number of pieces of Neanderthal art found in Spain. But what gets me about it is its uniqueness. There's a good word for it. I mean, I can see a half a cow, one on the top square and half a cow on the bottom square, and it's like it's going through some kind of portal. But I don't want to talk aliens or anything. And is the thing in the middle like a route from it going from one box to the other box, or is it a man in a helicopter from the future? Is it the time machine? Have you seen that, H.G. Wells?
I know, the helicopter man. You see the people talking about these images in Aztec art and so on, and Mayan art. I can see what you mean. Yeah,
it is just really. Is it just abstract? Is it what the trouble is? The modern mind makes you align with modern patterns. And so you can sometimes be blind to what a thing really represents, because that does look like a propeller on the back of something. But is it a man on the sled? Is it? I don't know. Is it part of a butterfly? No idea. I'll be really interested, because your mind is far more artistic and open the mind.
This one's fascinating. I mean, what even is the frame? What is that? That's you've got the really good one here. I've never seen anything like it. Right. Well, definitely the top and the bottom bovine, I think, must be the same thing. So they've separated it in half, and it doesn't seem to have blood, and it doesn't seem to show me a sign of a kill necessarily. So I'm not getting the sense of this is, because you could think, is it potentially on a very basic reading, you could say it's been cut in half, and they've put, and they're putting bodies in different parts to cook. I don't think that's the case at all. This looks like it looks very interesting, but what on earth's going on?
Then now we'll also show you this is the wall it came from, just so you see like the larger wall. That's the picture there. You can see my mouse.
Well, I'd love to see the other pictures, because anything could help to get more detail.
There are some of the animals. I didn't have them here. But sorry.
Can you zoom in any more? Is that as far as that goes?
Can I zoom in? It won't be of great quality.
Oh, wow.
You see, you've got some animals, a horse head.
Yeah. Is that very similar? It looks like a very similar boxing with another similar figure with that thing. Is that the same one? Am I looking at the same picture there, John?
This one in the middle.
It's the same one.
Picture. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay.
Just very fainted, and like the dots will merge because of all sorts of the painting. So so this is Neanderthal art, which is amazing. I just saw someone talk about it, Vol 100. But the next picture we've got, in case you haven't seen this, is fascinating. When I first saw this, my mind was blown. This is Bunaquel Cave in southwest France, and this is 175,000 years old, and it was made by Neanderthals. Now, initially, it might look like a mess. Certainly, if you just look at the bottom picture. Top picture shows you there's a bit more structure to it, and what we find is that these are stalagmites and stalactites that have been broken to exactly the same length. And laid in particular patterns, and then there were animal fat candles or like fires lit at certain points of that. And this is not in the front of a cave. This is in a cave accessed via a very small hole at the back of a cave. This is like 150 meters or so into a cave. This is, if you think that art was weird,
And if you think that art was surreal, then this is it. I mean, in fact, there's a super chat from Matthew Neves. Thank you. It is surreal, that painting. It's like, getting a message from alien. What are they doing? What does this mean? It's absolutely mind-boggling what this could be.
It looks like they've demarked a space, and straight away, as soon as I see a space that's been created, you could imagine. I mean, it looks like you can see where they've got some stalagmites crunched down, and they've put them on top of each other like that to create almost a little wall. So it looks like they've demarked a space. What do you think that space was used for?
Mm-hmm. Exactly, where you've got little patches of stalagmite and stalactite in the middle of the larger circle. So, I mean, what the archaeologists joke, this has to be a ritual site because we don't know what it is. But because we haven't found any other sites like this, then it's really hard to determine that is a ritual site. We would expect archaeology to find similar sites that would leave similar evidence if this was a ritual way, something that happened again and again and again, and we don't have that. And there would certainly be evidence of it because you can't really hide stalactites like this. So absolutely fantastic. But I just wanted to share that here for people who hadn't seen it and look it up. Bruniquel Cave in France. So there's a video on it from, I think it might be National Geographic. It's in French, but I think there might be subtitles. But
I'd like to check that out.
I can lend you my DVD if you want.
It looks like there's water within the sort of space they've created, and it looks like it goes off to the side. So I don't know whether but you can imagine
that would probably been dry at the time.
Oh, okay, but also potentially at the time it could have been used to collect water because it's not just demarked; it's the fact that they've layered it with those stalagmites. It makes you wonder if they were actually using it to contain water. So perhaps there's nothing sacred about it at all. It just contains water. It has a practical purpose.
But why break every stalagmite exactly the same size?
I don't know. I'm just applying a skeptical mind to try and make sure we're covering all angles.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. When I first saw that, my mind was blown, and people were saying in the comments it is really, really strange. So there's some other questions. So, question is: are there any paintings about our ancestors or cavemen using fire or making fire for the first time?
I'd love to
see something like that. I think it'd be hard to determine for the first time because here, even in, as I say, Bruniquel Cave, they were using fire. So there's certainly no art depicting that from the time it was first used. There may be pictures of fire later on. I know that we've got some of people, some narratives of people doing things, but I can't again recall any pictures. But what I want to do, just to let you all know, although I have so many plans, this may never come to fruition, is to create a database of cave art that I can then put in the Mythology Database to align it with sort of the myths and folklore, if we can, to make some link, which I think people would find useful and interesting, but it is somewhat speculative, and so you could argue had zero academic value, so why do it? But it is interesting, so I don't know. I'm torn. If you have any thoughts, let me know.
I wish I had that lady's book. So, The First Signs. I remember the book was called The First Signs. So let's see if I can get the lady's name because she's worth mentioning. First Signs. See if I can find her.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'll answer another question. One from Jason Mathewson again. The cave through the hole in the back of the cave, so the Bruniquel Cave, where does that align with the chronology and location completed to the motif of people coming out under the earth? So, yes, the earliest creation myth we know is people from the underground. So, before we wondered how the world was built, the earliest myths just talk about where people came from, and that seems to have come from underground and normally up through a tree. So it may, when we talk about people coming from underground, we're not saying coming out of caves, we're saying coming out of trees, because trees come from the ground and up. So I think there may have been some thinking there that
I got it.
If you've got this
vertical direction of growth, then perhaps that pulls people up. So I don't think it is aligned to that, but it's an interesting thought. Sorry, Matt,
Simon. What was the question again? That one you just answered? Because
did the date of the Brudiquel Cave possible ritualistic remains align with the people coming from the underworld myth?
Oh, I like that's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
But the underworld myth comes from a tree rather than a cave. But the age-wise, yeah. I mean, the trouble with myth is, I often say myths are, they're maybe older than 70,000 years, but rarely would say anything other than that, because we can't go back to that unless we think it, it is such a fundamental myth. We can feel more confident. And I know with certain myths, like I think it's the myth of immortality. Oh, I may be wrong here. And then maybe the underworld myth goes back 140,000 years. So that was the suggestion by, again, Julian Dehoy. But there are challenges to that. And I will talk about those in a future video on Craig and Ford, because I am conscious that whilst I talk about aging myths, there are issues and concerns with how we do that in phylogenetics. And I think it'd be really good to have a video to explore, just talk about those challenges.
I've got the Aboriginal people. I can remember quite a few myths where they talk about people coming from the caves underground, and obviously the Native American Indians had many similar ones. So that sort of suggests the dating goes back to about 50,000 BC. The one you mentioned, the tree, where we came from the tree, is that a myth that's even older?
Yes, the trees are the oldest of our creation myths. Okay. And then after that, you get the earth diver. Fantastic. The bird. That then turns into the dove in Noah's Ark.
When I read these myths about the Native American Indian people and the Aboriginal people, it was almost like the earth was the womb. So literally, all this life was coming forth from the caves because that was the womb of the earth. So literally, all the animals of Australia and North America were coming out of these caves. So obviously, that doesn't go back as far as 175,000 BC. But I do wonder
if Neanderthals had the myth.
Yeah. So it's possible. I think that's possible, personally. I don't know whether you could link it to that, but the idea of that myth going back a long way, I think, is reasonable.
So Julian Dehoy, I talk about him a lot because he really pioneered the use of phylogenetics based on the bearskin data. He's written a few books, all in French, though, so unfortunately they're not really available to us easily. I don't think you can get translations yet. But in there, he talks about how the evolution of speech may have happened, and how human speech may have differed to Neanderthal in the development of vowel sounds, and therefore allowed more complex stories over time. And that's quite interesting, because you understand that, then you understand actually complex stories are quite limited in their age, probably no more than 70 or 80,000 years old, potentially. So, I don't know. Perhaps if people are interested in that as well, I could sort of translate that into a video about that chapter in the book. I think it's in Cosmologies of his. So let me know. Right, we've got
Jeff Simpson Scott.
Yes, Jeff Simpson Scott. Are there fundamental mythemes which you would expect to see in European Paleolithic cave art, which seem to be missing? Let me think about this. Are there fundamental mythemes? So mythemes being a breakdown of sort of like a subplot without any sort of particular narrative around it. So it can be easily translated, interpreted, which we expect to see in cave art, which seems to be missing.
I'll give an example. The world serpent's an ancient myth theme. Can you think of any Paleolithic art that shows that? Yeah, there we go. Cool.
Yeah, so we have two examples of that, of snakes, whole snakes left at the source of a river inside the back of a cave. I made a video about that and how they could be considered ritualistic items left. But when we don't really see examples of this fire we've just had, but of the sun or the moon aren't really shown as sun or the moon in these pictures. Things like that. So yeah, there's an awful lot, Jeff, actually.
Well, the world tree, we were talking about this earlier. Yes. The world tree as a very, very ancient, primordial, fundamental myth, but I can't think of anywhere I've seen it in cave art.
Exactly.
In prehistoric Europe.
There's lots. And then the question is, why are they missing?
If they're that big and fundamental.
If they are that big, then have to. And is it that the cave art is representing a different type of narrative? So we get differences between folklore and myth, for example, where myth is about the creation of the cosmos and why we're here, but the folklore is more about what are your hopes and fears. Folklore sort of answers that, and it may be that cave art is representative of more folklore than myth. But then I think that's a really good question, and one I will answer in time, possibly even in my book, because I am now writing my book properly. So I will leave some room to.
This is the question.
Talk about that, because that is a really great question, Jeff. Yeah, sorry, Simon.
Well, this is what you and me were talking about before, because if you can't find the presence of certain myth themes in cave art, you start to wonder, does that mean maybe the myth theme isn't as old as we thought it was? Even though using the database, sometimes you think, oh, there's a confidence that could be as old as 70,000 years plus. If we can't find it anywhere, it does make you wonder, was it actually not that old?
Absence of evidence does not mean it's not evidence.
Yeah.
And for example, if we see the myth told in the Americas, the myth has to be older than 15,000 years. Something it's told in First Nation because of the migration pattern. So if they're telling that motif and there's no art about it, it shows that motifs do travel, even if myth themes then in that travel. So that is a brilliant question, Jeff. I really appreciated that. That's fantastic. Before we look at the next one, let me just quickly check if we can see any other questions. I don't think there are.
Can I just quickly say, because so I finish off a loose end, the first signs by Genevieve von Petzinger. She studies the geometric signs that was talked about earlier.
Oh yes.
And I think she detected a symbol that she thinks represents fire, but on cave art, so that could take it back as far as 50,000 BC. So whether that's the story of the creation of fire, who knows? But she's got some symbols. I think it's like it looks like a tree almost, but she thinks it's a fire symbol, the way it's used consistently. But that I can't back that one up too much because it was a while ago since I read it. But I do remember the fire symbol being in there. So that means.
That's interesting. Okay, I'll be interested in seeing that. So what I'll do is, once this video's up on YouTube, I can edit the description and put any papers we're referencing here into that over time, if that people want that. Okay, so right, next. So next we've got an interesting subject. If you're into cave art, it's interesting, and it's about hands. Now, we see a lot of hand art in cave paintings, and this is a very famous one, south of America, isn't it? Yeah, Perito Moreno, Argentina, where people have stenciled hands, some in red, some in black, where we see that a lot, and these have been done over the last 10,000 years, on and off, in this particular place. Now, if we then go to Europe, we see this. This is from a cave called Conscure Cave, which is now underwater, but I've got a little map there showing that. And so 25,000 years ago, you could obviously walk into that cave and people were drawing pictures of horses and the like. But some of their handprints have some fingers missing, or not missing, but half a finger missing. And some of them have 2 fingers with half a finger missing. Some have 3 fingers with half a finger missing. And if we look further in Spain, I think it is. There's a close-up of other pictures. You can see there's a hand in the top right with 2 fingers missing, or like this, and again on the left missing. Exactly. Why is this happening? And I think it's in Spain. Yeah, there's Spain 64,000 years ago, probably Neanderthal painting, finger missing. What is going on with that? And they say 61 of 71 hand images are missing digits. Now, some people think they were holding a finger like that and doing it, but then the art itself doesn't reflect that, because there'd be a gap in the hand, and it doesn't suggest that. It suggests that the actual finger has been amputated. So cut off. So some people thought it was part of sign language, but if you do it as sign language, why would you cut your finger off? Because you're permanently saying the same word because you can't put your finger back. So why is it a sacrifice to to the spirits, to the gods, to whatever? Why are Neanderthals doing it and modern humans? And that's an interesting question. So it looks like you're Googling away there, Simon. Are you going to give us a thought?
So there's a book I read, but this is really annoying. I can't remember hardly anything about it. I just remember this image stuck out of my head. This anthropologist was traveling through Australia talking to all the Aboriginal people to get their myths and their cultures. And one of the things he said is that there was a rite of passage that the children had to go through to become a man. And in this case, they would either chop off a finger or rip off a fingernail to help you to cope with pain, to be able to suffer greatly so that you could go through the worst possible experience, grueling pain. And the idea being that once you've gone through it, you now know what it's like and you can cope with it. You understand it now. And it was a way of just saying, this is a mark of becoming a man now, which sounds so silly because taking off a digit is so important for survival. Why would you take a digit off? But they either would take a finger off or a fingernail. I've just thought of it in relation to that, the possibility that potentially is there a ritual there where they, as a rite of passage, they are actually taking the finger off.
So we have many, many myths of that. In fact, the hero's journey myth, the most mythic of myths, is all about being happy, being really sad and being happy again. And also getting a finger pulled off makes you really sad, generally, and in a lot of pain. But we see it in sacrifice, we see it in Jonah and the whale type stories. You're swallowed for a few days, go through suffering, come out outside, you're full of joy and happiness, and the world is a better place. And it's generally true. You have to suffer to really appreciate how life in a better way. From my personal experience, we've all had lows. I've had a low moment in my life some time ago, and you come out stronger and better. And I wish I hadn't gone through it, but now I'm here. I'm a lot better for having done it. It's so yes, that is a really good suggestion. I like that. But then why two fingers? Does that mean you didn't feel enough pain with one?
I don't know. And maybe it's specific like you wouldn't do that to a hunter, you wouldn't do that to an engineer, but maybe if you were a shaman or if there's somebody who felt he was expendable, Odin took his eye out and the shaman might be more comfortable chopping bits off because they're thinking, well, I don't need it. I'm doing more abstract stuff. I'm going off into the...
I mean, the image we have, if you look at the last one in that cave from Neanderthal, in one. Now, there weren't many Neanderthals in the world.
But were they all... I was going to say, these handprints may have been done generational. So it might have been one generation did it and the next generation. So although it looks like they were all done at the same time, they may have been done over hundreds of years or scores of years. So it might be that we're seeing the ritual being done again and again with people whose generations are maybe hundreds of years apart. So it's not necessary that they were all done at the same time. We should always remember that they could have been spread out. And each handprint is somebody in a rite of passage putting it on the wall, and then it's like you've now become the shaman. You are now a part of this. Well, the medicine man or the holy man, whoever it would be in that tribe who works with the unseen world. That's a total speculative reading, obviously, but it's. No,
but I do like that. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I can go with that. I can go that. So we got another super chat from Esbil. Again, could they have filled in the finger with paint after doing their whole hand, like counting or number representations?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Yes, the answer is yes, they could have. But then you have to ask why. But the thing is, if it was so common, if we find bodies of Neanderthals or early humans in Europe, how many fingers do they have? Have we found any missing a finger? Did any shamans we found buried, do they have all their fingers?
It's all these questions about. I don't know. This is really
but
interesting.
if you find evidence of that, you can start going. We might be onto a little pattern here. We could go, there seems to be this old ritual. And going back to the hero's journey, the fact that it was ingrained into a culture to actually put the boys and the girls through that hardship, they must be terrifying to see, happening to your siblings older than you, thinking, oh my God, that's going to be me next. But it was they feared it, but it made them so strong and so. I mean, these are the great heroes. They traversed across the planet, took out all the lions and bears, and these were great people. I think we forget sometimes how amazing our ancestors were.
Yeah, the things they had to go through. So I mean, as you say, it's probably more generational than everybody at once doing it. Yes, so then only specific individuals in a society would go through it, not all of them. Otherwise, you'd have a lot more like that. And but you do have some that don't have any digits missing. So, I don't.
They chickened out. They weren't willing to make the ultimate sacrifice.
We do have a very interesting point here. So, Jim says, I'm pretty sure cutting off a finger is a fairly widespread mourning ritual. So for death, I have heard of that. I'm just thinking, is it that old? I don't know. I'd have to do some investigation of that. But
does Jim have any more information on that? It'd be interesting if you can expand on that a bit, because that's.
If it's fairly widespread, we should be able to easily find that out with a bit of research post show.
The reason to mourn by cutting a finger off.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, there's some good. I'm glad we're having this chat. There's some good stuff coming out here. Some great questions. Absolutely.
It's almost like having massive physical pain takes you away from the emotional pain. I just am interested in what the thinking was behind that ritual.
So some people say about curling a finger. There was a lot of research done to see if that was possible. The paintings were done, and we have confidence that fingers weren't being hidden or curled as part of the art. I'm not saying we're 100% confident of that, but we're high 90% confidence level that fingers weren't being curled. They were not there, or they were all being laid down. And as Esmil said, perhaps they were painted over one. We can't tell, but it seems a really weird thing to do, to go to the effort of making a painting for to falsify
and then to flake the finger off.
So I don't know. Really, really interesting. That, but some great thoughts here. I'm loving it. Right. Next, I don't even know. We're halfway through our picture. we're doing.
Maybe we have to split it in two, because there's so much to unpack in all of these. I could have spent longer talking about the older ones. They were the one you had. The bison with the half body at the top and the bottom. That's blew my mind.
Yeah, we can do another one of these if people want to. Yeah, you can all talk about it. Do you have a time you have to go? We never really talked about this.
No, I can go till whenever.
I'm old and I'll probably fall asleep by 10 o'clock, but I'll power on for a little bit longer. Definitely talk about this one, because this is the one that the next picture is the one that started the whole conversation.
Right. If we don't get past this one, this would be a good place to end if it's been long enough for people. But
so here we go.
Yeah. So we're in Mesolithic Europe now. Europe, and this art was depicted either 10,000 to 8,000 years ago in Mogura Cave, Bulgaria, and I was looking at it, and I was writing a post about this one. And I just saw something really interesting. So I was looking at the bottom. I don't know if everybody can see my mouse. Maybe they can't. But I was looking at the bottom of this image, and everything looks very terrestrial. We've got a dog. We've got gatherers. We've got hunters. We've got terrestrial animals like a sort of two-legged bird, and looks like deer and so on. It's all very terrestrial, very ordinary, something you'd expect to see in a tribal community. But when you go up to the next layer, this goes completely abstract and completely weird. And the more I looked at it, I went to town on this. I got some pictures on the internet, and I got a bit of graphic design skill, and I started to pick some of these images out at the top, and I tried to recreate them so you can see them better. So John, if you go to the next slide, it'll show you how I've divided the two to help you get an understanding. So all of these figures at the top, I think, just look. I think we need to
Actually,
get.
to show
You need to
those,
zoom out. You need to zoom out. Yeah, that's important. So those figures at the top, I've taken them from different pictures and drawn around them so you can see it more clearly. So you've got a very large figure with its arms raised in the air and very broad chest, and it looks like he or she is wearing a long tunic or dress. Then you've got another Birdman. So we've got another Birdman appearing, which is interesting, by the way, John, because I'm noticing the bird theme seems to be something that appears a lot in cave art. Again, with a phallus. So we've got the phallus again and the Birdman. Now, that's an interesting connection we've not made before between the art you produced earlier. Then we've got what looks like a woman with a long stretched out arm and a strange geometric head. Another man with a large phallic symbol, so a fertility symbol or a fertility figure perhaps. And then again, people with their arms raised in the air in a dancing position. But I thought to myself, these beings seem to be different to the ones below. They seem more abstract. Everybody in the bottom just has a normal stickman shape, but these are all broad and powerful, and they're doing gestures that aren't. They're almost abstract and symbolic gestures. So I thought, well, are these otherworldly beings? And it's interesting that the terrestrial pictures are at the bottom, which I've highlighted in an orange.
Yes.
And the more sort of divine-like figures I've put above are almost like not necessarily heavenly, but otherworldly. And are they separating the two worlds to give us an idea that these gods from above look below down upon us? And they could represent deities. So they could be fertility deities. They could be sky deities, an earth mother, perhaps, the one in the middle. Like the head is the land, perhaps. So the land, the four corners of the earth. I'm just thinking out the box here. But they do seem to capture very strong mythical elements. And yeah, that blew my mind. I just thought, are these some of the earliest depictions of personified gods that we've seen? But that one with the Birdman with the phallus, that the other picture you showed us 27,000 years ago. Where was that one based, John? France. Okay, so we're in Europe still. So that's interesting because it almost makes you wonder: was that a prehistoric deity that we may no longer have reference to? Because that you could argue that's the second time we've seen that mythical figure.
Okay, I will retort.
Go for it.
So I wouldn't. So my understanding from everything I have read is that the other world is always below if it's shown. Before we get to sort of heaven and sort of post-agricultural farming. So this is just before agricultural farming has hit Europe. So I look at it as those people are at the top are doing ritual because it looks like they're dancing. That they saw the arms in the air to jump in or whatever. I think they're performing some ritual, and the people below, that's your normal day-to-day life, the non-ritual stuff. And it's just split between those because people can't necessarily say, but there's like a step in the cave wall which differentiates them where you draw that line.
No, but it doesn't have to be a step. It's just the very fact that they're in a bar, if you like, above and below. Also, I will retort your retort with a retort. If you think about it, if it's a fertility god, but we very often link them to the rain. And the earth, if it was an earth goddess with the square head, you think of the four corners of the earth, you're very much looking at the horizon. So again, you're looking at sort of almost like a sky kind of thing. A Birdman linking to the sky, so it could be to say this is a being of the sky. The arms are raised in the air as if reaching to the sky. So they may not have thought of heaven or the other world, but they may have been thinking that the sky itself seems to be producing all these powerful entities.
Possibly.
That have...
Yeah.
So therefore, could it be a proto-heaven, if you like, an early conception of a heavenly world where the sky gives us the rains, it defines the horizon. There are birds up there like eagles, which have the greatest view of all, a godlike view. And then Shaman thought we could see through their eyes. It would be an amazing thing to do. So anyway, that's my retort to your retort.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, I don't think. No, but I'm. Yeah. I don't feel that from this. I mean, but I am really interested in some of the animals on the lower level because it looks like there's some almost dinosaur-esque figures there.
Yeah, there's no sign of an emu-like or an ostrich-like animal being in that region. So I did a bit of research on this. I was like, that looks like an ostrich, but I couldn't find any evidence of that kind of bird being around at that time, unless we made them extinct and we didn't necessarily know about them. But yeah, that's an ostrich-like bird. Apparently, should not belong there. So that was an anomaly.
No, so that's really interesting. We've got a few questions. I'll leave that up and let me whiz through some of these questions. So first off, we go back to the fingers. Could the lost fingers result from behaviours that are dangerous to the hand, such as fishing, capturing animals, or even putting your hand in the mouth of an animal that could bite the fingers off? So it could be that, but why? If the fingers were lost in accidents, one, they're all very, very clumsy people, and there's a lot of clumsy people there. And why would you paint it? So maybe, but I think that's less likely. But yeah, and all of these happy to be corrected, happy for you to suggest other things. So yeah, that's that. Any other questions? I don't think there are any other questions. Okay, that's fair enough. Right. Is it what's next? Let me just see.
There's another slide actually, which is also interesting from Megara Cave.
Yeah. So let me do this. Yeah. This is another piece. Right. So explain what you think this is, Simon.
So again, I've got a graphic designer's eye. So I look at things very sort of like, what do they mean? What's the symbols trying to convey? So I did graphic design for years, and the people who were describing this had completely different ideas. They were saying that those symbols that look like a fence, they were saying it could represent trees. There was all sorts of ideas. But as I was looking at it, I quite literally thought, well, it could be a fence, just a fence. It looks like a fence. And then I looked at the dots around the background and the foreground, and I thought, well, they could be crop fields. And as I continued looking at it, I'm thinking, well, yeah, you would use fences to stop, to delineate your land, and they could be crop fields. And then I was very interested in these large, I don't know if people can see my mouse as I'm moving it around, but in the center of the image, you can see these what look like standing stones. So they're block-like, and they're standing upright. And Bulgaria is not a crazy distance away from Göbekli Tepe. And if you look at some of them, they have, especially the one to the far right, it almost seems the block goes upright and it has like that T shape on top. Yep. So I just noticed that. And of course, Göbekli Tepe was one of the first sort of times where we were going from the hunter-gatherer to a sort of agricultural lifestyle. And this is much further on. So I was thinking, is this representing an agricultural sort of mythical telling? And of course, if you look at the top left, there's a sun symbol. And then on the far right, if you look at the bottom picture, you can see another sun symbol down there. So it's depicting the time of year, which obviously is very important to agriculturalists. And the cave setting, this is drawn in a cave, but it seems to be drawing outside of what's going on outside. And I think agriculture is there. I think agriculture has arrived, and with it, obviously, whenever there's a technology that updates like agriculture, all the myths and stories and insights of that come along. So I was wondering, if you look at the men in the middle dancing, there's all men and women dancing around in the middle. One of them in particular is about 5 times the size of all the others. And I was wondering if that was an agricultural deity, going back to the other symbols I showed you, with all of them linked to the sky, the phallus being a fertility symbol, the rain's coming down, in other words, the reaching of the arms in the sky. Is this a fertility god? And are they all doing a fertility ritual about rain, sun, all linked to the seasons? And it does seem to take you throughout. You've got 4. I think you've got 4 standing stones, which could represent spring, summer, winter, autumn. Very important to the agriculturalists. So I got very excited by this one because I thought this could be an agricultural myth that is about 10,000 years old.
Narrative. Okay, I must admit the T-shaped pillar thing did align with first thing I saw with this. And
I'd say it's unlikely because Göbekli Tepe by this point had probably gone. I don't know if it would have been buried, but it certainly was no longer being used. And the T-pillars were out of fashion at that, by the time these would have been painted. So it may just be coincidence, but there are a lot of weird T shapes there.
Yes.
We've got big T, but you've got thin Ts. I still think the images with people holding arms over the head are people dancing.
I agree with that. I think they are, certainly.
I don't think it's representative of deities yet. I don't think
but the arms are pointing to the sky, I think. I mean, because you can have dancing in all sorts of different positions. One of the pictures you had earlier, there was dancers all over the place, Yeah. But this one, it's almost like the ritual is saying, "This, we hail the sky. This is what it's all about. We're agriculturalists."
Have you seen the dervish dancers?
The whirling dervishes,
they all, their hands over the head. I just think it's just dancing. Whether it's the sky or not, I don't know. If they are agricultural farmers, they've only literally just started, which
correct.
Isn't impossible.
Yes. Yeah. And just to say, this one, it could have been, although it says 10, I think was it 10,000, 8,000. It might literally be 6,000 BC. So that's we're not in a bad place there for agriculture.
Yeah, I would say it would be just at the start. So they may have got these, and therefore they're painting the ideas that are new to them. So that may be the case. Maybe the case.
And look at the sun on the bottom plate. You can see eyes on that sun. So there's a sense of we're putting presence. We're putting a person behind that sun. So it does seem like they're personifying it. I mean, if it would help if I had a smile, then we'd really know. It's just the eyes, but yeah.
There's a very interesting point. Well, Jim Fenner, most apes dance with their arms above their head. I'm not suggesting they were apes, but it's just a primitive way of dancing.
Yeah,
maybe.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I can't see a story from it. And
I would say, a story of the seasons. It's just sort of, it would be very helpful if you're a farmer to sit down and to have the experts teaching you how it all works. These are the gods we worship. This is where the sun starts here. When it gets to here, it's spring. When it gets to here, it's autumn. So it might just be a way of explaining the story of agriculture and how the farmers, as they grow older, how they've got to think about the land and the beings they worship to make sure they get the rains coming in and so on, and the festivals and the rituals they must do to ensure they get a good harvest.
Or how about this? Because this is Bulgaria. It's just a short hop over to Anatolia or Turkey, okay, and Göbekli Tepe. What if this is someone's photo from going to Turkey, coming back and saying, "This is what I saw"?
Yeah, why not? Absolutely, yeah. This blew my mind. I've put a story down about it.
Yeah. And they just say, I don't know. It's
but it's a very interesting one. This is probably one of my favorite cave arts I've seen in this era, the agricultural ones.
Yeah,
but
so I quite like the idea of the first holiday snaps in history. Because it's so busy, so much going on. It's like someone's just doing a brain dump of everything they've seen. Because I can't see a pattern to it, but that doesn't mean it. It is, but it's very odd. There's very good find, Simon, of these. Very good find. So let me just plonk that back. So I'm conscious of time, everyone. When we started this, I had no idea how long we're going to talk, and anybody who follows my work knows I talk a lot more than I ever plan. And we're literally halfway through. So if people like this, and Simon's got time, we can try and do another one of these in a few weeks or something. I don't know. See what Simon's up to. I won't make you commit now, Simon, but if you could let everybody know when your next
I'd totally be up for it. If everybody else is, I'm enjoying it. The only thing I'll say is I'm still unpacking Stone Age art as I'm going through my tree of religion. I'm doing little videos and little sort of Twitter clips and things on it. So I'll have more to bring to the table next time as well if we do another one.
Excellent. Yeah, so we got India and China. We got some narratives, definitely mythical narratives. We got some cave art from England we wanted to look at. So there's plenty to do. So, and I think the general feedback is that people seem to like it. It was fascinating and lots of questions, and
I saw somebody said they like our dynamic. They like the fact that we're coming at it from slightly different angles, aren't we?
Exactly.
So it's good
well, that's
fun.
why we get on and have some great chats. We need people on it. We did record our chats, and we had a podcast we were going to do called Myths, Mushrooms, and Tea, which we may do again one day if the time allows. We get it organised, where we literally just chat about all sorts of things, and and the dynamic works really well. Simon has some brilliant questions and looks at things from a way I would never look at them.
I'm coming at it. Me. I'm coming at it from a mushroom way, and you're coming at it from a tea way.
That's probably a good way of looking at it. Yes. Yeah. So it looks like we'll probably do another one in the coming month. My next video on Queckenford is going to be on trickster gods and figures, which I'll try and get out in a week or so on the Patreon, maybe a couple of weeks, and then I'll release on YouTube in a month or maybe or so. I'm slowing down on the videos, if you don't know, anyone who watches this, because I've got a few things I need to sort in my personal life, but my health's not particularly great, so I'm just having a chill time. You wonder where my videos are. Simon, before we go, is there anything you want to tell people or remind people about what you're doing?
Well, if you're interested in the Tree of Religion, you can follow me on Patreon. I can put a link down later. You can even join me on a free tier. I'm always dropping little things about the Tree of Religion on there. And I think next week I'm bringing out a post. I'm trying to personify the earth from a modern perspective, because one of the things I'm doing I'm interested in myth making and recreating myths. So I'm trying to tell a myth for today. And if you keep your eye out on my video, I've got a good one coming out next week based on the work of James Lovelock. So I'm using his ideas, I'm trying to bring the earth to life as a thought experiment to see what people think about it.
That's fascinating. Okay, that's really cool. So for everyone, thump the like. If you haven't hit the like, please like this video. If you had hit the like, unlike it and like it again, because that YouTube gets weird about that and really likes it, and break the algorithm. Thank you all for your questions and your chats. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the amount of people talking here and the questions you're asking. Fascinating stuff.
Yes,
thank you, Simon, for your time and coming along, asking some great questions and
it's been a pleasure. Thanks, John.
Pictures, absolutely brilliant. Everyone here, have a lovely week. If you subscribe to, I've got a free tier on Patreon, so if you subscribe to me, there'll be a vlog out next weekend, all being well. And for those on Patreon, I will see you during the week with some updates. And with that, we shall say goodbye and thank you so much for all your support.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Care. Ciao for now. Bye.
Bye. Bye. I've got to work out how to end this, but yes, I'll be there. How do you
end stream?
End stream. Yes. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Do you really click it?